Big Bird leaves Sesame Street to live with a family of dodos, then tries to find his way home. Special guest Samantha Noah joins us to chat about a good old boy walking out of We Are the World, Miss Finch's creeper van, and sad songs to talk to your therapist about. Then we find out if Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glutton. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Test of Time podcast, where we talk about movies that are at least 15 years old, and today we're talking about a movie that is 40 years old. I'm James Brief again, and joining me, as always, is my buddy and pal and the director of this podcast, Alan Noah. How are you, Al?
Hi, James. I am doing very well, and joining me is my sister coming back on the show, Samantha Noah.
Hi.
Hey, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
Welcome back to the show. We had you here not that long ago to talk about American Psycho, but I saw that this movie, Sesame Street Presents, Follow That Bird, is turning 40, and I was like, okay, you gotta come back relatively quickly to talk about this. So we're gonna get into the movie, we'll unpack the movie, but first, I wanted to get your memories of watching the movie, because I feel like we watched it together, right?
We saw it in the movie theater.
We did?
I remember Mom took us. It might have been the first movie I ever saw, because if it came out in 85, then I was 4 years old. If it came out that summer, I was 3 turning 4.
I'm going to say, if you were 3 turning 4, you would have said you were 3 3/4.
Alan would have said that for me. I don't know if I was
No,
that
the
granular
movie came out on
math.
August 2nd, 1985, so you would have already turned 4.
Right.
You would have been officially 4. Maybe it was for, like, your birthday.
Maybe.
So that's really interesting. But we also watched it at home, like on VHS, right?
A bunch.
Okay.
A bunch.
So what did you remember from the movie?
So I have seen it in between.
Oh,
obviously.
really? Like as an adult?
As an adult. So Ryan and I watch baby movies sometimes. And we've been through the Muppets. And I know within the last probably 2 years, we've thrown on Follow That Bird.
Wow.
But I wasn't really looking at it in the same lens I was this time.
Okay.
And so there's definitely interesting things that I noticed this time around for sure.
Okay.
But there's random things I revert to. Like anytime we're driving upstate to Cooperstown, when we see the big bales of hay, I always remind him of Follow That Bird, because it always reminds me of Follow That Bird.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's just things here and there, which as we get into the movie, it'd probably be better for me to bring up.
Okay. And James, you had never seen this, right?
Not only had I never seen this film, but Sam, I am doing this podcast raw. I watched this film about 90 minutes ago.
Okay. Well, James, why don't you give our listeners a recap of what it's all about for the people who didn't just finish watching the movie 2 seconds ago?
I sure will. In this movie, a social worker named Miss Finch decides that Big Bird should leave Sesame Street so he can live with his own kind. She arranges for him to move in with the dodos, but Big Bird is unhappy there, and he decides to run away. While he tries to remember how to get to Sesame Street...
I wrote that. I'm laughing at my own joke.
Several of his human and Muppet friends head out to find him. Unfortunately, Sam and Sid Sleaze find him first, paint him blue, and force him to sing in their carnival. But thanks to some plucky kids, the Sesame Street gang finds Big Bird, they rescue him, and bring him home.
Aww. Okay, so this movie came out 40 years ago, and I know it was a bomb. It got crushed by every other big, huge movie from the summer of 1985, right?
You're right. I mean, there was so much going on with kids at that time. The film came out August 2nd, 1985. It had an $8 million budget. And the movie opened at number 9 with $2.4 million. It ended up with 13.9%. So from $2.4 million, that's over a 6 times multiplier. You know, it really had staying power. And if it wasn't for, a weekend that had an E.T. re-release and Back to the Future was there, The Black Cauldron. You also had National Lampoon's European Vacation. Rambo Part 2 is still in theaters. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and Cocoon. St. Elmo's Fire. I mean, there's so much going on that, it just kind of got lost.
So if we saw it in the theater, we were 3 of just very few people who saw it in the theater. So good for us.
Yeah, good for us.
So I watched this movie the other day, and the Oscar intro.
I'm gonna sing.
I did not remember that at all. That was weird.
Yeah. Why was he complaining? And what's he doing with an opening number? It had nothing to do with anything.
The only kind of reason, quote unquote, that I can give it for being there is that this movie is kind of ostensibly a musical. If you don't count the Oscar intro song, there is no song until Waylon Jennings shows up, which is maybe 30, 40-ish minutes in. I guess maybe Oscar needed to start the movie with the song so that there's a song in the first half.
I guess. Oh, I can't wait till we discuss Waylon Jennings.
Well, I mean, we're talking about you. What do you want to say about Waylon Jennings?
So the story goes that Waylon Jennings walked out of the recording of We Are the World because they wanted to put some Swahili into the song, and he shook his head, walked out, and said, this is a direct quote, "Ain't no good old boy ever sung Swahili. I think I'm done here."
Wait.
Yep.
So he showed up for the recording of We Are the World, but he was so racist about Africa that he couldn't stay for the whole song. Did he not understand what the point of We Are the World was?
I think that was a last minute thing that Lionel Richie or somebody wanted to put into it. Did you ever watch the We Are the World documentary? It's actually really good.
No, I should watch it.
You should, because that's where I got this. But yeah, he walks out saying that, good old boys don't sing Swahili. Yeah.
This is really messed up.
Yeah.
I did get a kick out of this movie is brought to you by the letters W and B.
Yeah.
There are a couple of gags that you get if you know Sesame Street.
Was that Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
Okay.
The movie was made by Warner Brothers, so that's what that's for.
Got it.
Well, usually it's brought to you by viewers like you and the public broadcasting system.
On the show Sesame Street, it would say, today's show is brought to you by the letter F and the number 6.
Right. Because the joke is that it's sponsored by the letter that they were teaching you education about that episode.
Right.
But I thought kind of almost like a meta joke, almost like an adult joke was, this is not a public broadcast. This is actually a movie. So this is Warner Brothers. This is not public broadcasting system.
And in that first scene, when the movie starts, and you see Miss Finch, who's very, very upset about Big Bird not living with his own kind, they tell her that Big Bird lives on Sesame Street, and then she says, well, can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? Which becomes a runner, and it kind of made me smile every time.
When she first walks into the room, she talks to all of her subordinates. She goes, I don't need to remind you all of our purpose. And then someone says, now remind us. And then she says, we are here, and then blah, 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 blah. And I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, because nobody watching the movie, even if you are a regular viewer of Sesame Street, knows who these characters are and why they're there. So they put the clunky exposition in a way that's easily accessible to little kids.
Yeah.
How did the Feathered Friends all of a sudden just know this?
Well, I was wondering about that. Do they know it because they watch Sesame Street? Because there is this kind of meta thing with the Muppets in general. In the Muppet movies, they know that they're in a movie.
Right.
And there are some fourth wall breaks in this movie.
Yes.
So maybe they're watching Sesame Street, the show? Maybe. I don't know. I think the bigger question is, why is there this
committee?
Governmental organization that is dedicated to making sure birds only grow up with their own kind?
I can go off on a whole tirade about their own kind and how many times.
I mean, it's there.
Goodness.
Go for it.
Yeah, we're doing this now?
Sure, why not?
The whole movie is a metaphor for segregation, basically. And,
oh, yeah.
Stick to your own kind.
Sure.
And, why is he not with birds? He needs to be with birds. And I think, effectively, they kind of paint Miss Finch to be a villain.
Yes.
Which is not a great message for kids in foster care or kids who are pending adoption or whatever the case may be. they don't really paint her in the greatest light, considering that there are kids in situations similar to Big Bird, and she's made to be a villain and not somebody that a child would go to for comfort. So that was kind of frustrating to watch it through this lens now.
That's fair. And I had a running list of things in this movie that are bad lessons for kids. Yeah. First off, that Big Bird runs away from home.
Right.
I mean, you understand why Big Bird's unhappy with the dodos, but still, running away is not a great thing to show in a kid's movie. He gets in that turkey truck with Waylon Jennings. That's a stranger. He's hitchhiking with a stranger.
Right.
And then at the end, he jumps out of the truck. But then they do talk about that. You're not supposed to jump out of the back of a moving truck. Hey, I shouldn't even be standing up. And then Gordon's like, it's okay, this one time we'll allow it.
I think that's the point, Al. I think actually, I think it's very important that he said in this particular case, yes, it's okay. There are situations where your parents can tell you there's an exception to this. But I don't think jumping out of a moving chicken van is probably the most applicable situation ever.
Sure. No, that's not coming up very often in the day-to-day life of a kid.
Right, exactly.
But Children's Television Workshop, the company that made Sesame Street, now it's just called Sesame Workshop, they really think about these things and the lessons that are portrayed and how kids will react to them. I went down a rabbit hole.
So did I.
Reading about Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Okay.
And there was a whole thing about how they were doing a special about Mr. Snuffleupagus's parents being divorced.
Right.
Like, kids were confused by it because in the show, you'd never seen Mr. Snuffleupagus's parents.
Right.
So they thought that if your parents get divorced, you'll never see the dad again because the dad wasn't a character. So, like, they do really think about these things. And I think with Miss Finch, yeah, she is a villain. And yeah, maybe in certain situations, a social worker would not be the villain.
Right.
But I think that the way Miss Finch is portrayed, one, just physically with the eyebrows and everything, she just looks mean.
Yeah.
The way she sounds is very mean. And the way that she's just so eager to
pull him.
Yeah, to rip Big Bird away from his family.
Well, first of all, do you know who her voice is?
I saw it, but I forgot. Who was it?
Sally Kellerman, Back to School. The lady who's a professor in the Rodney Dangerfield movie.
Okay.
But my counterpoint, in the 80s, there were so many positive adoption shows and movies. Punky Brewster, Webster, Different Stroke. Those were all like living the dream, right? You get adopted by this crazy rich family and everything is fine. Henry Warnemont was not super rich in Punky Brewster, but Webster's parents were, and Different Strokes, Mr. Drummond was. And Webster, he had to call his mom ma'am, which I always thought was kind of racist. But, but then there's this movie, and then Problem Child. And Problem Child was awful about adoption, you know? I mean, they kept asking when he was going to be returned. The grandfather saying, I hope you kept the receipt, you know? Most of them were like very nice, dramatized adoption stories, but then there were a couple that were pretty fucked up.
But the ones that you mentioned, those TV shows, Punky Brewster, Webster, Different Strokes, did we ever see where those kids were before they were adopted?
I think they made reference, maybe. Different Strokes, yeah. I think the mom died, right?
The mom had worked for the Drummonds. I forgot in what capacity, but he knew the children. And so he took them in.
But that's a big difference because in this movie, Big Bird has a family that he's being taken from. That's different from your parents die or you're in an orphanage or something. I would consider that a pretty big difference.
It is. It's just generally speaking with the theme, it's like, well, there's all these nicey shows, and then this and Problem Child's like, oh, wow, okay. Which causes an existential question within Big Bird even, you know, who am I? Where is my family? I thought this was my family, but they don't look like me.
Right.
The family of the dodos, it's an interesting way they wrote them because they're a very sweet family. They're very well intended because they're, by their name, they're dodos. Get it? Like, they're not very intelligent. No, they are extinct, but they don't mean any harm to Big Bird. It's not one of those situations where they got into some evil adopted family. And I was thinking, oh, maybe it would have been easier if it was like they were evil in some way, and then he has to run away, and then it's very understandable. But then again, you know, then you have your lesson of like, for foster kids, you have to fear if you get adopted that you're going to be put into a workshop or something. No, that would be a bad lesson too. Right. I almost feel like maybe someone even just a random person or a group kidnaps a big bird because they think he should be with other birds. Just maybe get the whole adoption thing out of the... I don't think there's any way to win here because either he's running away from a kind of a nice family the first night he misses it. Again, usually you don't miss family. That's the whole point. Like, he already had a family.
You're right. It is kind of a lose-lose thing. I agree.
I get with the lesson they were trying to go with that. I wish they had just picked a different plot point.
I mean, they weren't villains, but they definitely isolated him. He wasn't allowed to have Snuffy visit, you know?
Right, well, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back and why he wants to leave.
I think they're, like, too stupid to let Snuffleupagus come.
And he wouldn't have fit in there anyway. And how the hell did Big Bird fit in there or on the plane when he's 8'6"?
Right. Well, kind of taking a little step back as we're talking about Big Bird being adopted.
Yeah.
I did not know that Big Bird was a 6-year-old kid. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got the mentality of a 6-year-old. Oh, so you thought it was weird that he's a full-grown adult being pulled.
I guess I just didn't remember that part.
Okay.
And I guess that's just a thing you know if you watch Sesame Street, the show. But Oscar the Grouch is a Muppet who lives on Sesame Street. He has a car and he drives.
What's the car's name?
Oh, the Sloppy Jalopy?
Isn't that your nickname in high school?
No.
It was mine.
Oh, yeah, it was yours.
Anyway.
The Count is a adult who drives, I guess. So it's
Bert
not
and
like...
Ernie have a freaking plane.
Right, exactly. They have a pilot's license?
It's right. And it's like Sesame Street has the money, and then the Muppet movie is like they're broke asses. The Count's car was like a deluxe, like whatever the hell it was. You know?
Well, he is a count.
Yeah, that's true.
He lives in a castle.
That's true. Fair.
A castle on a street in Manhattan, I guess?
Yeah, I guess. In the hood.
Right.
So maybe they don't have money. I don't know.
I don't know. And while we're kind of getting into the characteristics of the Sesame Street Muppets, the thing that I remembered was that Snuffleupagus is imaginary.
Right.
He is Big Bird's imaginary friend. Right. And in this movie, the only character that Snuffleupagus ever interacts with is Big Bird.
Right.
And that makes sense because the other characters, when they have the map in the diner and they're tracking Big Bird,
yes,
they don't invite Snuffleupagus in because Snuffleupagus isn't real. But then Snuffleupagus sends this postcard, which is a big giant thing.
Right.
So how does he do that if he is imaginary? Again, I went down a rabbit hole of Snuffleupagus. Apparently, shortly after this movie came out, in the following season of the show, they retconned Snuffleupagus and said that he was real. He was never imaginary.
Okay.
And that he had always been real. It was just that the other adults didn't believe Big Bird whenever he talked about Snuffleupagus. And so finally, in this one episode, this very special episode, they see him. Do you want to hear a fucked up story about why they did that?
Why?
This is what happens when you go down an internet rabbit hole. Because at that time, there were a lot of kids being molested. And so the idea of Big Bird always telling the adults that this thing is real and the adults don't believe him.
That's smart.
They were afraid that that could have some unintended consequences. Kind of going back to that thing about these people really did think about every single thing that they put in the show.
Right.
So then, okay, Snuffleupagus isn't imaginary anymore.
I have some counterpoints to everything they thought about very thoroughly.
To be fair, it's not an exact science.
No.
And they're probably going to get some things wrong.
Right.
But they do have the best interest of the kids at heart.
I know. Listen, I always said the way they dealt with Mr. Hooper dying was fantastic. That I actually had just shared with a friend who has small children and kind of had to start to explain death to them. But they get it right sometimes with this movie. I think there's a lot of questions. Also, Miss Finch has a creeper van. There's no windows. She might as well have a sign that says free hugs and candy. I mean, like, talk about, like, why would, like, it's a creeper van. It's a little scary. You shouldn't be getting into a van with no windows.
Well, Big Bird doesn't get into the van.
Right.
This is just kind of a random thing, but the dodos live in Ocean View, Illinois. I like that. That's a good gag. There's no ocean to view in Illinois.
Got it.
I thought that was funny.
Oh, and by the way, really, really random. The body of Marie, the little dodo girl.
Yeah.
She's played by the same person who was inside Hoggle in Labyrinth.
Really?
Yeah, it's the same little. There's an actual person in there, and it's the same one who is Hoggle.
Chevy Chase had a great cameo in this film.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says his line that's, his cute line that says, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood," which of course is from the theme song. But then he makes a reference to the news events that are happening in the film. He says, and this bird is originally from Sesame Street or Sesame Street.
Sesame Street.
Yeah. It must have been a really slow news day of Big Bird running away as top news. Like, what the hell?
Well, I mean, having Chevy Chase in there, fine, sure, it's 1985. The bigger cameo, I'm sure, for kids watching the movie was Kermit the Frog.
Right.
Who was frequently on Sesame Street as a reporter. Yeah. That was his job on Sesame Street. And apparently this is the last movie that Jim Henson portrayed Kermit the Frog. You know what was one joke that I remembered vividly? Is when they are having like that first meeting in the diner and they say, "Does anybody have any questions?" And Oscar the Grouch says, "Yes. What is the capital of South Dakota?" It's so random and it's so weird, but I remember thinking that was very funny as a kid. And I remember looking up, probably in an encyclopedia, what the capital of South Dakota was, just in case that ever came up. If I ever bumped into Oscar the Grouch and he would ask me that question, I would know. Pierre.
Okay.
That's just something I was inspired to learn from this movie.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
See, it is educational.
Yeah.
I do want to say right now, the director of this film, I was very surprised to see that it's Ken Kwapis. Do you guys know who he is?
He did a bunch of Office episodes.
Yeah, and I think he helped create the show.
Yeah.
Just for some of the Office fans, he did Diversity Day, the Dundies, drug testing, Casino Night. He directed the finale.
That one, he's not going to win a prize for. The other ones were great, though.
This was his directorial debut, I believe.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be John Landis, but he had some other duties.
And Jim Henson met Ken Kwapis, liked him, and then hired him on the spot.
Got it.
Which was apparently a thing that Jim Henson did.
What did you guys think of the restaurant?
Oscar, the Grouch restaurant?
Yeah, lunch of Friendlies.
I was wondering how many kids saw this movie and then thought it would be really funny to say, "Toss salad," and then throw lettuce all over.
Toss salad.
As a father, I was thinking about that. But, I mean, it's funny because they're all grouches and they hate everything and everything's gross and the service is terrible, but they like that. But also they have to complain about it.
I mean, I feel like if this film were out today and it were a huge hit, judging by the reaction to, say, the Minecraft film, there's a certain scene that elicited kids going nuts and emptying the theater. I could see kids going viral by bringing in an iceberg lettuce and then slowly during the first few minutes of the film, unraveling the whole thing, and then it's a huge lettuce fight for 30 seconds.
The joke that Oscar makes is, we had lunch at Friendlies, so now we're going to my place, it was called Don't Drop In.
Right.
It reminded me of like Dick's Last Resort.
Just
being
definitely
nasty. But I mean, did you recognize anybody in that scene?
What, you mean Sandra Bernhard?
Right. And she went from Sesame Street to Severance. I mean, but let's stop at Roseanne in between.
I was just reading a thing about her. She was in a big movie in the early 80s, The King of Comedy or something.
Oh, that was a De Niro movie. I actually never saw that one.
Yeah. And so she was kind of riding high from that. I think that was 83, 84. I don't know that the kids watching this movie would know who Sandra Bernhard is. It's more for the parents who bring their kids. But also that was part of Sesame Street, the show, and still is. Famous people stop by, and do all the kids know these actors? No, but, it's just a way for them to get some exposure and hang out with Muppets, I guess.
Did you remember who Mrs. Dodo's voice was, speaking of cameos?
Mrs. Dodo, no.
Lorraine Newman.
Yes, I saw that, but I wouldn't have
put it together.
Her voice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like the joke where Sam Sleaze, when he says, "I wouldn't pay to see no bird," and then he adjusts his Orioles cap.
Right.
I did like that. Of course, Sid Sleaze is played by Joe Flaherty, who was, in my opinion, always known to me as the dad from Freaks and Geeks. But he was known for a lot of things. Yeah, Happy Gilmore, too. He was the kind of friend to Shooter McGavin, but Shooter McGavin wasn't his friend.
He's also the guy who delivers the letter to Marty McFly at the end of Back to the Future Part 2.
Oh.
And he is from SCTV, along with Dave Thomas.
Yes, and Rick Moranis.
Right. And John Candy, who also has a cameo at the end. But honestly, watching the movie the other day, most of the things that I remembered were the Sleaze brothers.
Yeah.
I don't think it was because I found them scary as a kid, but when they were trying to catch Big Bird with the stupidly small net, and when Dave Thomas is sleeping and he's got all the money and he's holding on to the keys. There's just something about those characters that were memorable to me.
So, I mean, are we going to delve into the Bluebird of Happiness now?
Sure.
Oh.
That is sad. It's heartbreaking. Going back to what you were saying earlier about segregation.
Yes.
I mean, they put him in blueface.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, right? I mean, they made him dye his feathers blue. He was not there because he wanted to be. It was against his will.
Carol Spinney, after they did that scene, was crying.
Oh, yeah.
Because that song is so sad. You know, calling Big Bird the Bluebird of Happiness, it's right after they're talking about the invisible gorilla. I was thinking, like, they're both kind of half right.
Yeah.
You know, the invisible gorilla, well, it's invisible. The Bluebird of Happiness, well, he is a blue bird. It's depressing, and I feel like that's kind of the main thing I remembered, is watching that scene and getting sad.
So, okay, so this is actually my last note. There's like 3 songs from my early childhood that were completely traumatic. That is one of them.
Okay.
Baby Mind Dumbo, which will still get me every fucking time.
Every time.
And I will be shocked if either one of you even remotely remembers this one. The Great Chipmunk Adventure had the Chipettes singing My Mother. And that was a song that always got me. And this reminds me I should bring all this up in therapy this week. Because there's definitely underlying things to all of these.
I do not remember that song. And I remember that movie. I remember the Chipmunk Adventure movie.
They missed their mommy.
Courtney and I were just talking about that not that long ago, actually, weirdly.
I would say that a very close, very sad song for me would be a similar 1985-ish rodent song. Can you guess what that is, Al?
Somewhere Out There?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
well, and
Okay.
it's funny you bring that up, because the song that Big Bird sings while he's looking at the night sky, and then all of the Sesame Street friends are looking at the same night sky, wondering if they're looking out at the same sky. I was like, that's the same exact idea.
Right.
And An American Tale, which we will have to do on the podcast at some point, that is a depressing song. But that comes out in 1986.
Okay.
So it's unlikely that they saw this movie and then ripped it off, given the lead time for animation. It's just probably a coincidence that they both had this similar idea at the same time, but they are very similarly themed, those two songs.
Yeah.
Early stories must have been like, no matter where you go, we'll look at the same moon. And I think this theme has been around forever. It's been portrayed again and again. I loved the end credits. Not only does the count, he starts counting the credits, and when he gets to one woman, Joan Gans Cooney, he says, "Hi, Mom."
Hi, Mom.
I thought that was maybe the voice of the count, and that he was like, David Gans Cooney or something. No, but that woman was the creator of Sesame Street.
She's everybody's mom.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. She is considered the mother of Sesame Street.
Speaking of moms, I had to pause it because Ryan watched it with me and show him. And I've always said it, and Mom kind of looked at me sideways. Maria. I always thought there was a resemblance to our mom and Maria.
Okay.
I paused it and I found an older picture and I held it up and he's like, okay, fine, I get it. Because the facial structure, one thing I will say that I don't think stands the test of time, it's just that, like, if you watch the couples in Sesame Street, it's Luis and Maria. And then it's Bob and Susie. So it's always like a white person with a white person, a black person with a black person, a Spanish person with a Spanish person. They never really, back then, there was no, intermingling of the races.
I think that's what they were calling intermingling of the races. I think that they were saying black families and white families and Hispanic families all live on Sesame Street. I think that's what they were going for. I don't think that they were going against interracial marriages, but I think that they were trying to probably give the reality to kids at the time that there were probably black families and Asian families and maybe a Jewish family and Mormon families. And that's another lesson that they'd get to. I don't think they were we're trying to not say it.
No, but it does speak to the stick to your own kind.
Fine, that's fair, but I think we are also seeing that more in 2025. They didn't have any Mr. and Mr. Hooper.
Ernie and Bert were always gay. Well, come on.
I mean...
Read a book.
Yeah. Fine, then you can go one further. They didn't have Mr. and Mr. Hooper, who one of them used to be Mrs. Hooper. You could always, in 50 years from now, say that you're not including someone else.
Right. But Sam, let me ask you, what do you think about the movie as a whole? Does Sesame Street Presents, Follow That Bird, stand the test of time?
So this will probably be the only time I have said this out of 8 podcasts, but looking through the 2025 lens as an adult, I have to say it doesn't. Because the fact that they make sticking to your own kind such a huge theme. Well, they're trafficking Big Bird, so that's also another thing that's not really great.
They're not really trafficking him. They don't move him around. They enslave him.
Well, it's a move. It's a carnival. Carnivals move.
Yeah, but we don't see that happen.
Okay. Well, they have him in a cage that's movable. Yeah. So clearly the intent. But I think that wasn't great. And I think the fact that making the adoptive or, foster child or adopted child or whatever seem like there's something wrong with them, I don't think is a great message either. But again, this is me looking at it in this lens. So did it stand up? Did I love the movie always? Yes, I still love it, but I don't necessarily think it stands up. And I've never said that on the show before.
Well, you're allowed to. Just as a counterpoint, I think, though, that the idea of, hey, you're supposed to stick to your own kind, and then learning the lesson that, no, that's not the case, that you don't have to stick to your own kind, I think that is still a powerful thing that does stand the test of time 40 years later.
But it took a while to get there.
Well, sure, but that's the point of the movie. That's the lesson that you get. I think in a world where kids are being pulled from their families and people are being sent back to where they come from.
Right.
I think that sentiment of you need to be with your own kind, damn it, is a thing that people do need to learn the lesson of. No, you don't. You need to be with people who know you and love you and care about you. And that can be a street with Muppets and Grouches and Big Birds and, all of these people and everything.
Oh, funny. Also, I'm sorry, just because we're on this topic.
Go for it.
Do you notice who shows up the first time ever at the end of Sesame Street at Follow That Bird?
Oh, Elmo?
Yeah. I think this is before he was anti-Semitic.
Wait. Elmo is not anti-Semitic.
I know.
But I do think you could make the argument that it doesn't stand the test of time that Elmo isn't a huge character in this movie.
Sure, this was
because
his intro.
Now when you think about Sesame Street, you think of Elmo.
Right.
Elmo is like the big star of Sesame Street.
Okay, so that's one Noah that says no. Al, do you think Follow That Bird stands the test of time?
I think the movie really does stand the test of time, kind of because of some of the things that you're saying it doesn't. I think that these lessons are important. I think a lot of people need to know that believing that you have to be with your own kind is bullshit. And I agree with you about the whole adoption, fostering thing being murky. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and it's not presented in the best possible way. Right. But I think the lesson at the end is important and valuable and very much stands the test of time. I think a lot of people, including the President of the United States, needs to hear this fucking lesson. Also, we timed this episode to come out because of the movie's 40th anniversary. Right. Also, though, Sesame Street is very much in the news right now because they have pulled all of this funding from public broadcasting. Republicans have hated Sesame Street and weird. Mr. Rogers and NPR and all of these organizations for a really, really long time.
So stupid.
If this movie came out today, everyone on the right would be blasting it as way too woke. Yep. This is the kind of shit that we hate. Yep. We cannot indoctrinate our kids with this, where the person pulling the kids from their families is the villain, teaching about love and acceptance and empathy and people caring about each other no matter what they look like.
It's cruel.
That is wrong. Right. That's why they've pulled the funding.
But it is a very cruel administration. There's no reason to take away Sesame Street. I mean, that's just mean.
Of course.
Yeah.
To be clear, I'm not saying that they pulled the funding from Sesame Street because of this movie specifically, but I think it is because of this kind of lesson, this kind of message, which is so antithetical to everything they believe in.
Well, and Jennings wouldn't have been in it now.
Well, sure. Fair. But you know what I mean? Like this belief of people coming together and loving and caring for one another. Yeah, I think that this is a lesson that really, really does stand the test of time. And I think that the movie does hold up. I think people should watch it. In spite of its flaws and everything, I think that overall this is a movie that kids should watch today, 40 years later.
See, that's the thing. I love the movie, but I don't think it stands up the test of time because of the things I've said. I would never knock the actual movie. I don't love how a lot of the themes were presented in hindsight now.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. We're looking at the same thing and just having different takeaways. But that's cool. Yeah. That's all right. James, what's your tie-breaking vote about this movie? Does it stand the test of time?
I never really liked Big Bird that much. I didn't think he was nearly as funny as Grover or Bert and Ernie.
Fair.
Like when they would do those little shorts on Sesame Street, I liked the Grover ones a lot better than a Big Bird.
I was more of a Grover guy myself.
I loved Grover.
Yeah.
But I saw that there were a couple of different things from the original script, one of which was that Bert and Ernie in their biplane was going to rescue him. I figure when you're gonna have something like Bert and Ernie flying a biplane upside down, why not have him, rescued that way?
Right.
Rescue a ladder and just have him jump on it or something. Because, Big Bird obviously is a man in a costume. He's not a puppet by strings. You could still have the stunt of him jumping from, a car onto the, the ladder or something. They were going to originally have kids a lot more in the film, being like the star of the films, like going cross country. And I think that would have been a mistake. Every time they had kids, I think it slowed the film down. I feel like this movie couldn't really decide what decade it was because it did like definite 80s jokes because it had like, the at-home calisthenics joke about the Dodo family doing the like, that I guess you call it like the Jane Fonda workout. That would be the stereotype workout there. But they also would have, this farm is like, this kid has like a slingshot out of the back of his pants when you first meet him, as if he was Dennis the Menace. And the way they got water out of the ground, maybe this still existed in 1985, maybe it's still around a lot today, but it was one of those things from like Little House on the Prairie. It was one of those hand pumps.
Right.
But overall, I actually thought it was quite a cute Sesame Street movie that I think the heart of it was very, very in your face about you don't have to be, with your own. I actually thought they'd make it a little more obvious that the point was being that like, maybe a black family is going to adopt a white kid or vice versa or, something like that. Or I didn't think they explicitly said that, even though they did say my home is Sesame Street with all these people. Yeah, I mean, he did say we have monsters and we have, grouches and honkers. So I guess they didn't really want to go and black people. Like, I think that would be kind of almost a little bit too much for the like 5-year-olds going.
No, but they showed it. As the camera panned around, you saw the black people and the Hispanic people, the deaf woman.
Right, I forgot
which
about
was
her.
which was a big deal at the time too,
Linda,
having a deaf character.
Yes.
Right. But this film is very cute and it stands the test of time.
I was just going to say real quick, in terms of the well, I don't know if you remember Baby Jessica falling down the well, but that was in 1987. So there still were wells around that time.
Oh, okay.
Remember that?
Right. Out of the three of us, none of us mentioned another thing about this movie that doesn't stand the test of time is cell phones.
Yeah.
Because,
him.
even if Big Bird is a 6-year-old that doesn't have a cell phone, fine, but anyone he meets will have a cell phone,
right.
And it will be very easy for him to contact Sesame Street. It would be very easy for him to find out how to get to Sesame Street by pulling up Google Maps or Waze or whatever. Of course, if Big Bird did have a phone, then they could track his location with Life 360 or Find My Phone or whatever.
If he was 6, though, he might not have had the phone numbers to whoever at Sesame Street committed to memory.
Sure, but if he knows Mr. Hooper's store, then they could Google it and they could find the phone number. It doesn't require Big Bird having a cell phone, but living in a world where everyone has a cell phone, it would make it easier. And I think, honestly, you could probably say something similar about most road trip movies from the pre-cell phone era.
Every single one. Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Cell phones change everything.
It does.
Neither here nor there, but thought it was worth mentioning. But Sam, thank you so much for joining us again. This was fun.
Yeah, this was a wholesome one as opposed to the last few.
Well, I mean, if you're coming back for Requiem for a Dream,
I forgot.
guess.
Yes, when's that one?
Wait, I'll tell you. Hold on, I'll pull up the list here.
Is there anything for like when you get on here 9-10 times?
Nope.
How about baseball hat?
Nope.
No cap?
Nope. You can get your own cap. Mid-October is the 25th anniversary of Requiem for a Dream.
Okay, that'll be fun.
So we'll have you on like 3 times in 2025.
Nice.
That's a lot. You'll get sick of us.
No, we're good.
Or you'll get a lot of exposure.
That's good for my brand.
Yeah.
It doesn't really exist. I'm gonna have to come out with something now.
Well, thank you. This was really fun.
Yeah.
I could not imagine doing a podcast episode about Follow That Bird without you, Sam.
Thank you very much.
It was
This
part
was
of our
fun.
childhood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Huge.
And James, thank you for indulging us and watching the Sesame Street movie with us.
Yeah, it actually wasn't the worst 2 hours I could have spent. So I had a couple laughs, and I'm probably never going to watch this film ever again.
Never say never. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about Freaky Friday, because there's a sequel that's coming out for whatever reason, Freakier Friday. We will go back and watch Freaky Friday with Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan. I've never seen that movie, but that should be a good time. That'll be another family-friendly film, I assume. In the meantime, we love hearing from you. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Write to us. Let us know what you think about Follow That Bird, about Sesame Street, about Big Bird, about Grover. Oh, we didn't even talk about Cookie Monster eating the car.
Right.
I mean, come on. You love cookies? Sure. That's relatable to kids. You love eating hubcaps? Come on. That's just weird.
And I also think Super Grover's powers are wildly inconsistent because he can clearly fly cross country.
Yes, but he gets tired. I think the inconsistency of his powers is consistent. That in any given episode, he can do wildly different things as per the needs of the story.
Yeah.
I think. It's been a while, but I think that is fair. But yeah, we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.